Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Zala, Behavior Specialist for the Y. Thank you so much for joining me for week 2 of our 3-part webinar series, Building Confidence and Autonomy for You and Your Family around distance learning. Tonight we're going to be focusing on easing anxiety for your kiddos during this time. So last week we talked about behavior momentum. All behavior momentum is giving your kiddos something easy they enjoy doing before giving them a task that's more difficult. I used the example last week of doing rocks, paper, scissors, shoot before math for your kiddo. This just fills their tanks with confidence and validation, and they're given the fuel they need before they take on more difficult tasks and expectations. Within the next 2 weeks, all the goals, strategies, materials I present to you are science-based. They're designed to increase confidence, decrease anxiety, so that your kiddo can work more independently, but with procedures in place to help them do this. They're not going out on their own. They have tangible strategies that are going to help them achieve their goals. When this happens, you're able to meet the needs of what you need to do during the day. Today's tools meet the needs of all learners. This is preschool through high schoolers. If your kiddo identifies as neurodivergent, ADD, ADHD, or is on the spectrum. If your kiddo is verbal or nonverbal. If your kiddo is typically developing, these will be extremely effective. And if your kiddo has not been struggling with distance learning, and actually it's the first time their educational needs are being met in a way they haven't before, you're definitely going to want to put some safeguards in place to make sure their success continues. So in less than 10 minutes, I'm going to teach you the first tool that I show parents how to implement if their kiddo is stressed out around events or they're telling me they're anxious at particular times. I'm not sure if you remember, a couple weeks ago, the Y sent out a survey. So thank you so much for everyone who completed the survey, because the answers are what fueled the topics for this webinar series. The #1 stressor for parents and caregivers right now during distance learning is, no surprise, it's having to oversee distance learning while meeting the needs of your job. I want to remind you, this is extremely difficult and you are not alone. Since distance learning has started, I have talked to people in these professions who are also parents. A 3rd grade teacher, a special education teacher, a social worker, a licensed mental health counselor, and me, a behavior specialist. I'm a mom to a 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. This is really difficult. What you're experiencing right now is why teachers don't have their own children typically in their classroom. If you have ever coached your kiddo, you know, wow, they were one of your more difficult athletes. So what you are experiencing right now is what a 3rd grade teacher, a special education teacher, a social worker, all these people, myself, are experiencing right now. But that's the point of this webinar. It is difficult, but you can handle this. You are more than enough, and now you have tools to help you. So it is absolutely difficult. You are not alone, but we are here for you, and we're going to implement tools together. So, to remind you, the ultimate goal, pretty much the thesis of this whole webinar series, is we are going to try to increase confidence, decrease anxiety, so your kiddo can work more independently with, again, those concrete strategies in place so you can meet the needs of your job and responsibility. So the topic for tonight is schedules, and that is how we are going to ease our kiddos' anxiety through schedules. Why schedules? How is this going to ease their anxiety? I'm not sure if you've seen this little indie flick. It's called Frozen 2, right? We've all seen it a million times, especially if you have children. I love Frozen 2 for a bunch of reasons, but I especially loved all the nods to mental health they made throughout the movie. So this is my analogy for schedules. I want you to think of Olaf in the scene. things are going awry. He's letting kids jam crystals all in him and decorate him. He says, we're calling this controlling what you can when things feel out of control. Things are a little bit nutty now and not how they typically run. We're teaching our kids at home. Schedules give you control over things when life is feeling out of control. So schedules also show us what we have accomplished and what is going to be happening next. They show us how long we need to spend on a task. Isn't all of this sounding comforting? Just like, oh, I know what I need to do to be successful. It gives us a sense of control in an uncertain world. Just like our friend Olaf, he's letting the kids decorate them because that's something that they can do right now and they can have control over. I talked to a lot of people, and it was funny the things adults were doing at the very start of quarantine to give themselves some sense of control. I didn't realize it. I ate the same breakfast every day for an entire month, and that was giving me some sense of control. These schedules will give your kiddos some sense of control in this distance learning that's happening that's making them feel out of control right now. So remember the first week of quarantine or the first couple weeks, I heard so often I would feel so much better if I just knew when. When am I going back to work? When are kiddos going back to school? And then finally, so many of us got to the point where we said, I don't care about the outcome. I just need to know when. We really needed a schedule. We needed some sense of control. Because when we have information, then we can put coping strategies or schedules or plans in place. So when you think why schedules are important, I want you to think of the analogy of a public bus. And I actually have an example of this. My first job out of college was at a preschool in downtown Seattle, and everybody took public transportation. The public transportation is phenomenal in Seattle. This dad came up to me one day and said, my kiddo is having a temper tantrum every time I try and get him off the bus. I'm just literally having to pick him up, take him off. It happens every day. So of course I asked him a series of questions. Is there anything he's scared of at school? Do you think he could be worried about you leaving? Is there possibly some separation anxiety happening? And then I thought for a second and said to him, are you giving him any kinds of heads up before you take him off the bus? Does he know the stop is coming? How about some visuals or warnings? And he looked at me and said, we've done this bus route for years. So he has to know what's happening. I mean, I don't tell him what's coming up, but he has to know what's happening next. So what was happening to this dad is something that all of us, including myself, do and are guilty of all the time. Adults have a lot of prior knowledge that kids don't, and we just assume that kiddos know. So the dad said, we'd rode this bus route forever, but so no, I don't give him heads up. But imagine how jarring if all of a sudden you're riding a bus and without any warning, someone just ripped you off. That is what it can feel like sometimes to operate without a schedule, that I don't know what's happening next, what's happening. And literally in this case, the kiddo was just being ripped off the bus. So I urged the dad, I kind of gave him a challenge. I said, tomorrow, I would like you to say to him, you have 3 stops left. You have 2 stops left. You have 1 stop left. Give him some visual cues. I rode a similar route, and as an adult, I knew when I got to the public library, the school was the next stop. If it was really snowy, yucky out, sometimes I would just look up at the top of the bus and they have those schedules with the circles, and I would follow the stop. So I told the dad, just try it and see how it goes. Give him the warning, point out some visuals, and then tell him right before it, next stop, then we're getting off. Sure enough, the dad came in and said the kiddo got off the bus fine. So all that was happening was he didn't know what was happening next. He just needed a schedule. These big behaviors and tantrums were extinguished simply from a schedule. And knowing what's happening next is such a powerful and comforting feeling. You are the expert on your kiddo. above anyone else. So going forward, when creating your kiddo's schedule, it's really up to you and your kiddo. There is no correct or incorrect way to do this. It's helpful if you know, does your kiddo learn best through touching things? Are they, that's called a kinesthetic learner. Tricky to say. The next one, does your kiddo need visuals? Do they learn better from not only words, but also seeing pictures? Do they need a larger print? Also, if you're unsure the best way your kiddo learns, that is absolutely totally normal and expected because kiddos can learn differently in different environments. At the start of distance learning, I was talking to a friend and she said her kiddo was bouncing all off the walls. They couldn't figure out what they needed. So I suggested just call the school and see what they do. Sure enough, the school said, oh, the kid sits in a rocking chair. Parent had no idea that that's what they were doing during the day. They knew there might be some alternative seating, but didn't know that was the specific one that worked best for their kiddo. Put their kiddo in a rocking chair, super successful going forward. No one expects you to know all the answers. That's why we have a community and a village. So reach out to your kiddo's school if you need help figuring out the best way your kiddo learns. So this is the first schedule that I'm going to teach you how to implement. And the next slide is actually a pre-recorded video of me explaining for you how to do it. So enjoy. So the first schedule that I'm going to show you how to implement is the to-do all done or work all done model. Here it is right here. To make this so super duper easy, in the comments, just like last time, we're going to post this template and everything you need, these little icons right here for preschool age and school age. So you can print them out. In a perfect world, you would laminate them and then add Velcro to them to keep it straight. If you are doing it like this, I always say to do the hard Velcro on the hard surface and then put the soft Velcro on these guys. That's the way it's consistent. But this is not a perfect world right now. I went to the store. They didn't have any lamination sheets, any of like the self-stick ones, and no Velcro. So here's a little pro tip. You could just use some packing tape to laminate, and I just use duct tape on the back of them. And then all you're going to do is when your kiddo, before your kiddo comes down in the morning, have them all set to go on the to-do side. Talk to them about what their schedule is going to be, go over each individual one, and then as your kiddo completes the task, have them just take it and then move it over to the all done side. Just like that. If you have a kiddo who enjoys tactile sensation, sensory, they're going to love the Velcro of pulling it off, moving it over. If you are using Velcro, make sure you back this some cardboard. Just cut up an old box and then put it on the box before you put the contact paper over it, lamination, whatever you want to use to make it nice and sturdy. And yeah, you're just going to move them over as your kiddo completes it. Make sure you're praising them. Make a super big deal about it. And if some schools just you have to complete a certain amount of work. Other schools, they have specific time blocks for each subject. So if you want to do a time block, I'm just going to do a line to show you how this works. But this is going to blow your mind. So Sharpie, you could write the time. And then to change it every day, dry erase actually takes up Sharpie. I'm kind of doing this backward because of the camera. And then, yeah, it just completely erases it. How cool is that? So every day you could do that. Also, if you don't want to be bothered printing these out, they're not meeting your kiddo's needs, on the to-do side, just write their schedule in the Sharpie, and then either have your kid use the dry erase marker to think it's so fun, or have them write it and all done. There's a million ways that you could use the schedule. So this is the to-do all done model. Just make sure you keep that praise up. Most important thing. So this is the next version. I'm going to teach you how to implement and create. This is the Lego Duplo version. And just like last time, the following slide is a pre-recorded video of me teaching you how to implement it. So the next schedule that I'm going to show you how to implement is the Lego or Duplo model. You're going to do the same thing that you did for the work all done model. You are going to cut out whatever schedule icons meet the need of your kiddo. Same. I just use tape right now. A perfect world, you can use Velcro, put the hard Velcro directly on the blocks, and just line up their schedule. There are so many ways you could do this. If you have a kiddo who's older who you think would really appreciate the little Legos and building a really intricate structure, you could color code each of the schedule pieces to whatever color meets their Lego. Like for right here, breakfast, I could underline it red. As they complete it, say go find a red piece and they could build. But I'm going to show you this one right now. But be creative, imaginative, collaborate with your kiddo, talk about what works for them. So how you would do this is when your kiddo comes down in the morning, have this set up. You're going to show them what their day is going to look like, explain each thing, and then as they complete it, say, come on over, take off that first piece. So breakfast is done. You could have a bin with from the previous sheet the all done piece of paper, attach it to the bin, have your kiddo toss it in. You could almost do like across the room. Awesome job, kiddo. What's next? Morning meeting. You did it. Look at you're plowing through that Lego block. Next, and then have them keep on going through and say, oh, look at one more until lunch. You have finished your lunch. Awesome job. Recess. You're done. First half of the day is done, kiddo. No more blocks. Again, this is where you have to know your kiddo. If you think they enjoy building up, you can have them build up too instead of taking it down. Another way to do this, again, just like before, if you don't want to print out everything, if this is easier for you, and some mornings it just will be, you can write directly on the Duplos. And again, the same trick works just when you're done at the end of the day. Just take it. You can use the dry erase marker, and then it will just wipe right off. Isn't that so neat? It will wipe right off, and then tomorrow you can start again and do brand new schedule, however it meets your kiddo's needs. So that is how you do the Lego Duplo model. And again, be creative, have fun. There is no correct or incorrect way to do this. Good luck! So I hope that both those demonstrations made sense on how to create and implement those two different versions of schedule. So here are just some additional tips. Make it fun. The sillier, the more interactive, the better. Also more personalized. Your kid will be way more eager to use it. The second thing is assume they have no idea how to operate, read, or manipulate the schedule, how to move the picture icons. Almost think as if you were explaining it to someone from another country who has no prior knowledge or any idea how to operate this thing in front of them. All of us are so overwhelmed right now, so you really have to break it down as simple as possible and assume nothing. And you're going to do that for the first week or so and take cues from your kiddo when it's okay to start fading back. Praise specific and spectacular behaviors when using the schedule. As little as it may seem, it should be celebrated. You moved it over. This is the first time that you moved it from the work side to the all done side. Amazing. Did you build the block tower without me seeing? Did you add 2 things you completed? Amazing. So really keep that praise up. Don't forget to include breaks, meals, fun activities. Just like adults, that's what's going to motivate your kiddo to get through their work. Know there is going to be trial and error. When you're making your schedules, it might not come out the way you wanted. It might look different. Your kiddo might one day like one version of a schedule, another version another day. Don't worry about it. Be flexible, and the only way you're going to know is if you try it. So it's kind of inevitable that some things your kiddo's going to like, some things not going to, and it has to work for you and your family. Consistency is key. So that's part of the trial and error, finding what works for you and your family. And again, ultimately, the least amount of verbal communication, the better. Our brains are so overwhelmed right now. So if you can gesture to the schedule, you can point to things, you can just tell your kiddo, Check your schedule after you've modeled it a bunch of times. That will lead to their independence and decreased anxiety because they're being autonomous around it and they know they can take care of it themselves. And also, it's less mentally overwhelming for them to have all this input coming at them. So fading back equals more independence. Just like we talked about last week with the behavior momentum, there's something happening right now. There's a thing, a behavior. Your child is feeling anxious around distance learning. So gosh, we need to put something in place. We're going to use our energy to be proactive and positive. We're going to put schedules in place for them, because if not, if we don't put something in place and try and help them feel less anxious and give them control over their distance learning, we've seen what happens, right? Not super duper fun. Anger, frustration, yelling, arguing, work refusal happens. But if we put these schedules, a positive behavior strategy in place, they're more likely to be successful. The more successful they are, the more their confidence increases, their anxiety will decrease because they feel like they have control over their distance learning. And how fantastic will that day be when you get to say from your desk, wherever you're working, go check your schedule, and your kiddo independently is manipulating that schedule all on their own. That's like your reward for all your hard work. I just want to remind you guys to make sure you reach out. If you have any concerns about your kiddo's mental health, check in with the school, your pediatrician, a mental health care provider. In Rhode Island, I include the link to Kids Link. It's 24/7 access to someone to ask questions about mental health regarding your kiddo. And there's also a link for nationwide mental health care to kind of get the ball rolling if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining us again. I can't believe we're done with week 2 already. Remember, we're building a virtual community. Overnight, our villages shrunk exponentially, and now it's so important that we're here for each other. So please post pictures of the schedules you create in the comments. I'm so excited to see what creative ways you're implementing the ideas we talked about tonight. I will be online for the next 10 minutes answering questions, and then periodically throughout the week. If you have any questions that you're not comfortable posting in the comments, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is right on the screen right now. It's azayla@gpymca.org. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care.